You are listening to With Intolerance, a podcast for machinists by machinists. I'm your host, Dylan Jackson of Proteum Machining, and this week I am very happy to bring back Ethan Patane. How's it going, Ethan?
Hey, all good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So before we get into the last week that you've been at Proteum, I want to definitely first congratulate you and your team on winning the Formula SAE competition this year. Amazing.
Yeah, that was huge. We were very excited. We came from a really bad streak, both of like team HR and like the technical side, not having a car for a few years. So we're very excited.
Yeah, I loved while you were at the shop, you said one of your friends reached out to you that like he was listening to your first episode, I think, and you were like, yeah, we haven't been competitive. I don't see us winning anytime soon.
Yeah, just 2 years ago. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, before we get into all that stuff, we've got a few questions about graduating and all of that stuff. So let's jump into those. Tux Garage said, how does it feel to be a college graduate? So, how are you feeling having finished this off and, secured a job and all that stuff? I imagine it's kind of a whirlwind of emotions. How's that all going?
Yeah, it's honestly been pretty standard. I don't feel really different if I had to really quantify it. I said in an Instagram post a little while back that it feels more of like a bookend or a divider between periods of my life, periods of accomplishment, I guess. I'm definitely proud of it, but I feel that there are other things that I should be more proud of, like the work that we've done on the team in the last 5 years and things like that. So I'm definitely proud, but I'm prouder of other things that my friends and I have accomplished.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. Zap from the Patreon was asking you. So he also has an MET degree and is also a firm believer that it's in not necessarily going to college. So he says, can you talk about how you are applying your degree to a CNC space? And do you feel that your program, while not geared towards machining, opened a ton of doors in the CNC world that you otherwise wouldn't have had?
It definitely did open a lot of doors, but extremely indirectly. I would say almost in no way did the program directly open any doors, in that the program was focused on stuff that I was very interested in and therefore found pretty easy, and subsequently afforded me a lot of time to do other things like the machining and the outreach that I wanted to do. And so, like I was saying, indirectly, that opened the doors, really allowed me to have the time to go out and meet new people, travel, run interesting machines, do interesting co-ops, mentor a lot of people. So I do think it opened a lot of doors. To answer directly, yes, but very indirectly. I talk a lot with my good buddy Leif about mechanical engineering versus mechanical engineering tech or manufacturing engineering. And he actually just switched from my school to the School of Engineering. And so I'm interested to see how he likes his new program, because we're constantly going back and forth talking about, what's better, is one better, what are the advantages of each.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and like you touched on, your co-ops seem to be, such a leg up over any other college experience, anybody else I think I've had on the show. Like,
yeah,
it's very rare that you talk to a college student who is running, MU Akumas and making parts in aerospace. And I think that that's a pretty amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
So what about applying your degree? Do you think that there's anything directly from your course load that you're looking forward to using at your upcoming job? And, or is it more the things that you learned in those auxiliary things?
I don't want to say that there was nothing, because I definitely did learn things in classes that I'll use. I took a PLC programming class and now can look in the back of a machine, and if I'm able to access the ladder logic, I can kind of tell what's going on. I took a couple robotics programming classes, and so can program FANUC or ABB robots and things like that. So those will definitely be useful. Some C programming classes, those are helpful, because if you know C or C++, you can kind of freeball any other language and like kind of just figure it out. And so I taught myself JavaScript and how to edit posts So that was definitely something that I use regularly. A couple of months ago, I was editing. I converted a Tormach plasma cutter post into a wire EDM post. So that was a very handy thing to be able to do just in one night, convert it. And now we're ready to test.
That's killer. Yeah.
Yep.
I had told Zoltan when he posted the other day about wire EDM and like hacking together a post. I was like, oh, you got to go talk to Ethan. He's like, actually, I'm already talking to him.
Yep. Yeah. I was just going to say I sent him that post.
Oh, awesome.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, so a question from one of your friends, Zane M. He was asking about your time at RIT, and you did, he wants you to talk about your time there, and you did some super cool things. And we've talked quite a bit about what you were doing at RIT in your last episode. But let's talk about things that you will remember. Give us a couple stories that will last the test of time. That, looking back, you're like, oh, that was a key moment on the team for me.
Yeah. I have a lot of very good memories. I remember sitting in my dorm freshman year all alone, like almost crying, I think, because I was thinking about the memories that I had from high school in my robotics team and thinking, boy, I probably will never have a group like that again. And now sitting here, I'm thinking, boy, I don't know if I'll ever have a group like that again, as in my formula team.
Right.
Some hilarious memories. I remember coming home one day after trying to get the car driving, and we failed at like 2 a.m. I come home and I'm just sitting at home, probably eating a bowl of ice cream. And my roommate and good friend Kate comes home, and she's like almost in tears. And I was like, Kate, what's wrong? She's like, I hit a possum. I hit a family of possums. And I was like, are they okay? She was like, I don't know. I said, what does it sound like? She goes, ba-dum. And I was like, oh, okay. I think they're probably dead, Kate.
No.
As far as actually relevant stories in the shop, all the nights that we were up the entire night and then going to get bagels in the morning, there's a bagel place like 15 minutes away that does homemade bagels. So whenever we were driving really late or working really late, we'd go and grab bagels. One particular night that sticks out was we were doing some friction welding in the shop just to screw around and see if we could do it. And so we put 2 half-inch steel bars, one in a Jacob's chuck and one in the 3-jaw on our big LeBlanc in the shop. And I think we spooled it up to like 1800 RPM and just made them kiss, shoved them together, and friction welded it successfully, and then tried to break it in bending in one of our arbor presses and put a like 6-foot breaker bar on this little arbor press that really never should have seen even like one person's worth of force, and then hung 4 people on it and completely destroyed the lever on the arbor press. And the following night, I welded up a new arm for it and presented it to the shop manager the following morning at like 7 because we had been there welding the whole night. So it's memories like that I'll definitely remember the most.
That's awesome. So, kind of going along that, what do you think led to your success this year? Are there specific things that you guys changed over last year that you think really let you become competitive?
There's definitely something to be said for the repetitive nature of what we do, especially not changing a ton every year. Some people, myself included, and I still sometimes think that it wasn't great for us to build relatively the same car for multiple years in a row. But it does allow you to perhaps not perfect, but significantly improve the performance of each subsystem and therefore improve the overall performance of the car. For example, our drivetrain group, by bringing the drivetrain from outside the chassis to inboard, lowered the CG of that system by 2 inches. And that system is a big, heavy motor and some beefy mounts. And so I think it lowered the CG of the car by almost a 1/4 inch, which is not insignificant. Crazy. Yeah. It's maybe that's insignificant in a commercial car, but in one of our cars, it's pretty significant. So things like that, things of that nature. I want to say that the sort of social nature of the team improved a lot. Not to say that there isn't much more room for progress, but we had a really great project manager in chief this year. And although we didn't always we always got along, but I was always pushing them and they didn't always like that. And I think in the end, they both came to realize why I was pushing them and why everybody else was pushing them, because had we not pushed them, we likely wouldn't have been in the situation where we were.
Yeah, totally. Are there any lessons learned that you can bring to your next job or social dynamic that you think really helped let you push without engendering, animosity?
I definitely learned, I would say I learned, yes, the good way there, but the lessons that I'll take away are from learning the hard way, where I pushed people too much or I didn't push them in a kind enough way. And then it led to some animosity. And then we grew and we learned and figured out how to traverse that. So I will take things away definitely from the positive experiences, but I'll take more away from the failures, I think, where it was late at night and I told someone how I really felt and I shouldn't have.
I think we've all been on a hot job or something and done the same, and had to backtrack the next morning. Like, I'm sorry. Don't be mad at me for the things I said out of hunger and tiredness and all of that stuff.
Yeah, my friend from high school and I, two friends, we were in a big group chat, and several years ago we got in an argument, and then I pretty much didn't talk to one of them again for 4 years, and then I just texted him again yesterday to apologize and offer my services to prototypes and parts for him, because he's creating a startup to make components for his TMJ, to basically research the development of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I think you put this one on there. Anive Moody asked, what's your next milestone post-graduation? So I think you've shared publicly already where you're headed to for your job, right?
Yep.
So let's go into that. What's going on? What did you get hired for? And what are you looking forward to?
Yeah. Well, first off, I just want to give a shout out to her. Anive is my girlfriend. She is wonderful. She is extremely supportive in everything I do. Yesterday, we went to, so my parents are renovating a house in Portland, and in the meantime, we're living in Freeport, and I'm constantly going back and forth, picking up tools that I'm trying to sell. Yesterday, without question, she just picked up a box of 50 tool holders and lugged it into the car with me. So I have to give her a shout out. She's wonderful.
Awesome.
The biggest milestone that I'm going for, there are two in mind. First, I want to get my wood shop set up again, because I haven't done any furniture design, any woodworking in 4 years now. And I got the knack. I really am missing it. And I also would like to start some kind of small business on the side. Not something that takes a ton of my time, although if I have to be honest, it probably will end up taking a lot of my time. So I would say those two things: getting the wood shop set up and starting something small on the side that I can develop over the next 5 years or so.
Awesome. Yeah. And then where are you headed?
Oh, right. I'm headed to Scott Manufacturing, which is in Woburn, just outside Boston. Everybody pronounces it Woburn, and so did I, but it's actually Woburn. Scott is a fairly young company, I believe started in 2017, and has developed quite quickly into a very modern and aggressively growing additive and subtractive manufacturing facility. If you have David on, he can definitely give you a better perspective on the growth of the business. But from my perspective, it's a very modern and appealing, clean, slick manufacturing operation.
Yeah. Well, I think anybody who follows them on Instagram will have, it almost felt overnight that it went from Porsche and McLaren parts to we've got Grobes and we've got, a brand new building. And, it clearly wasn't overnight, but it, to me, at least on the outside, felt very quick that they spooled up a pretty amazing facility.
Yeah. Yeah. And the small world thing about it is that the architecture company that my dad works for designed their new building. He texted me one day. I think he visited there and sent me some pictures inside and was like, do you know what these machines are? Yes, I do.
Yeah. I remember you telling me that while you're here. That is such a small world. What a wild coincidence.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into your week here then. Do you want to give us a rundown of everything that happened while you're here? I think it's probably a little more meaningful hearing it from you rather than what I saw on the outside.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll start from the get-go when my luggage went to Atlanta and I went to Tucson. that was a bit of a pain, but luckily I have a friend who works for Delta and helped me get it rerouted. So shout out to Greg. On day one, let's see, I replaced the Speedio windows and started design on the calibration palette, or I replaced one of the Speedio windows. That was very satisfying.
For me too.
Yeah, I bet it was. Let me look through my photos because I took photos of everything that I was doing, and I'll remember better if I look.
Yeah, I think day one you also did the first OMP 400 replacement.
Oh, right. Yeah, I replaced one of the probes, and then day two might have done another probe. My pictures are not too helpful. So yeah, op one on the calibration palette. Did some programming and design of that impeller. Man, it's all such a blur now.
I know, for me too. It went by incredibly quick for being a full week.
Yeah. At some point, we machined op 2 on the calibration plate on the Hermla, and then screwed around with trying to manually calibrate.
Yeah, we learned some lessons that day.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, it turns out that little box is not for your preset. It's just supposed to be 0.
Yeah. So to clue everybody in, Ethan replaced the OMP 400 and the S700, and then I had him do that with the Hermla as well. And in trying to calibrate the full stack, the laser, and then the probe, there is one box in calibrating Z that says, is it datum or preset for?
It says datum, which should have clued us in.
Yeah, it says datum for Z or datum for probing or something like that. And me being distracted and Ethan not having a ton of experience in it, we were like, oh, we're using preset 4, throw 4 in there, and calibrated it, and then tried to, did the Z, did the XYZ, tried to do kinematics, and every time it would go from A0C0 to A90C0, it would freak out and say like, ball not in calibration or something, or
by like
probing out of limits or something like that. Come to find out after we did the loop 3 times, 4 times.
Yeah, 3 times. And then I switched back to inch to use one of your MDI codes that was in inch mode. And then I went back to the probing cal and saw that it said 0.1575. And I was like, that's weird. That's 4 millimeters in inches. And then I was like, oh, okay. And then it hit us.
Yeah. And you had swapped back to the OMP 40 because we were worried that maybe that probe was just weird.
So we
changed that back to 0.
Yeah, swap back for the probe, recalibrated the probe, indicated it, everything. Yeah.
Yep. And you got your first taste of programming a probe itself.
Yep.
And checking settings and all of that, which I've only done a couple of times, and it is a little confusing. You thankfully are smarter than I am and recorded the light sequences. Usually I would just sit there and like look at it and frantically write notes and make sure that I had it all right. But that made it very easy.
Yeah, it was stressful. I think I told you, like, I've done a lot of wacky stuff on expensive machines. Something about watching those lights flash by is like very stressful.
It was interesting seeing you, because every time we've talked, you've seemed so unflappable about almost anything, and then you're like, man, I really like this is stressing me out.
Yeah.
Like, oh man,
killing me.
Yeah. So we finally finished the manual calibration off the calibration palette that you made.
Yep.
And then what else?
We made the impeller. I made a couple of your customer parts. That was the last day, the last morning. Went to lunch a bunch, had some really good food, got some good dinner recommendations. I went out and ate dinner with a friend, actually, who lives in Colorado, but was ironically in Tucson at the same time I was. So that was good. What else did we do? Oh, we went to Pima. That was very cool. Appreciated the tour of that.
I was really glad we got to go out and see that and have Jay walk us around just so you could see. Like, I'm not bummed that you didn't see it, but I would have liked for you to see the old program so you actually had an idea of the comparison. Because like for Brad and I, it's so exciting going there and seeing just how much how much resources they have now compared to how it used to be.
I saw the building. I saw the exterior of the building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
so
it
we got
looked like
a
a
full
serious
tour
improvement.
there, which was really cool. Seeing the machining, welding, I'm blanking on what the AIT, I think they call the robotic stuff upstairs. That was cool to see.
Yep.
And then the amazing automotive tech building, which I had not even been in. It had been there for a while now.
Yeah, Noosh should be in heaven there.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that building is amazing for that program as well.
Yep. Yeah, that was very awesome. I'm glad we got to do that.
And then you also went to the Air and Space Museum, right?
Yep, I did. That was very, very cool. I did not realize, I mean, I'm such a, I know nothing about like aircraft naming and things like that. Some of my friends are like real snobs about it. Someone a while ago posted something in our cool stuff channel on Slack, and they were like, check out this F something bomber. And someone replied, actually, it's not an F, it's a B for bomber. And we were like, yeah, you must be fun at parties. No, that was very cool to see all the different aircrafts, military and commercial. The 77 Dreamliner, that was very cool. I found some Moog hardware, which was interesting. Took some pictures of parts that I had recognized. That was very interesting to see stuff that I had seen or worked on actually in use.
Yeah, totally. I thought it was very cool that like the next day you came in and you're like, yeah, like, you know, these are Moog pieces. And I was like, oh, was it, you know, engraved or something? You're like, no, I just recognize how we program those things. Like this is very clearly a Moog part, which was it's cool to hear that side. Like I'm constantly talking about like the artistic side of machining, and like that's very clearly like, oh, that's the artist signature right there of like, this is how we do these, you know, cylinders with intersecting holes.
Yep. Yeah, Moog had this really interesting thing they would do on all of their manifolds where, well, the models were just like sticking tubes, no fillers or corner radii between all of the lugs. And then they would just take a 3/4 inch ball and mill and 100 thou step over surface the whole thing. But then that same part, if they had an outside supplier do that and it came in with that finish, they would reject it and say, we need 5 thou step overs with this tool.
No way.
Yeah. At least that was, I had heard that story a couple times. I don't know if that's still true, but I had heard that story.
That would be exceptionally frustrating, especially as an outside vendor. You like maybe even get a picture of an example part and you're like, cool, all right, I know exactly what I need to do. And then you do it and they're like, nah, that doesn't look good.
Yeah, get lost. Yeah.
Oh, man. That is tough. Well, we can get into some of the questions that we got about the week you had here. Your friend Leif asked, out of every shop you visited so far, what sets Proteum apart? Also, Harmless C250 or Prototrack TMC5?
So I wanted to give this question a thorough response because I had a lot to say about it. So I wrote down my answers here. Proteum stands out because you guys are not afraid to spend money on the things that will help the business. You invest in the people, not just the parts and the processes and the business. Very friendly, and it feels more like just hanging out with buddies than it does a stressful machine shop where Big Brother is always watching over you. It was clean. Walls are painted. Airlines are done nicely. Electrical's done properly. At least it looked like it. I didn't open any breakers. And definitely a huge emphasis on quality and doing the right thing. Like that part that I was making, that little Delrin thing. On the very corner, there was a tiny little nick from the rough and gouging. And that probably could have passed. But the right thing to do was to just remake it because we had the material and the soft gels were already there. And it really didn't take much more time. And maybe that part would have gotten accepted, but you did the right thing and got it remade. So that was definitely, I definitely noticed that kind of stuff happening regularly.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. And I did not put this question through to have you blow smoke.
No,
as I told you in the beginning, like when Ethan first showed up, I think it was your first day or maybe the second day that we went to that Optics Valley meetup. I was like, you know, I try very hard to not wrap my ego up in the company, and especially in like the current way we're doing things. And so I let you know immediately, like, let me know what we're doing wrong, because I can't, it's very hard to see the forest through the trees when you're in it every day and it is your shop. So I very, very much appreciate that. Like those are the things that we try to do. And so the fact that they were apparent to you, definitely makes me feel good.
Yeah. I definitely noticed as the week went on, I became numb to certain things, as in things that I noticed on day 1 that kind of bothered me did not bother me on day 7. And I was like,
very interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as for the more important question, C250 or TMC5?
I'm taking the C250 all day long, but I want to just walk the audience through just how, I don't want to be negative, but like just how bad this machine is, the TMC. I wrote down a list moving front to back of the machine, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a million things. So the RMX control has no macros, no probing. There is probing, but it has to be done manually. So you take the little jog pendant and you jog it, and when the probe contacts the workpiece, it stops, and then you can back off and enter your numbers. No user variables, no macro variables. You can't do multiple work coordinate systems because everything is incremental off of G54. And if you set G54 and then set G55 and then move G54, G55 moves with it, which is, it's kind of like the FANUC thing with the G54 extension where you can just move all the work offsets. Mm-hmm. But it's not like FANUC, that's an option. You don't have to do that. This one, you have no option. And if you turn the machine off or if you rehome, it's gone. Let's see. There is an option for through spindle coolant. There's no option for through spindle air. Circularity is pretty terrible. I've had as much as 5 thou movement in X and Y over 8 hours of running. If you leave the wash on, the coolant will foam and overflow. If you have filters in the bins and leave the wash on for more than like 30 seconds, the bins will overflow. Tool changer fills up with chips, occasionally drops tools. I do really like the coolant gun though. I got to give them props. I forget where it's from, but the coolant gun is very nice. And then I weirdest,
just pulled it up. I didn't realize that this was the one with the weird electric hand wheels on the front that you can kind of move wherever you want. It is a really strange looking machine.
It is very strange. Those hand wheels actually are kind of nice because without a probe, the only way to find your part is edge finding. And so you can move X and Y at the same time rather than having to toggle between it on the jog pendant. Yeah. The very weirdest thing was when trying to do multiple work offsets. Even if you set them up properly, 54 is number 1, 55 is number 2, or however you want to do it. We spent 4 or 5 hours consecutively troubleshooting, just getting the machine to go to the right place in Z. So say, like we were making soft jaws and op1 was in one vise and op2 was in another vise. It would go to the right place in vise number 2 and face the top off. And then it would retract, move over, go down, and then go right through the vise. It would try. And we could not figure out why it wanted to go through the vise. The program was all right. And eventually we tracked it down to a combination of the first Z move, I think, needs to be a feed move. And then X and Y needs to be a rapid. And depending on the gauge length of the tool, you need to start below or above the tool change Z position.
No.
Yeah.
That is bizarre. Yeah. So freaking weird.
Yeah.
Oh my
this
goodness.
Machine is just like so unbelievably unpredictable. And so although it is very reliable when you just give it basic things to do, which is really most of what we do, when you try to get fancy with it, it all just kind of falls apart, unfortunately.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad that you guys had a fleet of machines at your disposal for Formula, but
yeah.
I think what's actually great though, and I think we talked about it a little bit while you were here, maybe Brad and I talked about it after you left, is that like I could imagine it being very hard to learn in school on very nice machines. Like if you guys had only had Akumas, it would have been tough, going to another job and having to run a Brother maybe or a Haas or something like that. You would have been like, oh man, in your brain, at least for me, I feel like it would have been like it's missing a basic functionality, not like this machine is so nice because it has all of this extra functionality. And so like you guys started out with about as basic a machine as you possibly could. And from here on out, everything's going to look like, gold plated machines and roses and all that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely did get spoiled initially because the first machine I ran was the LPM with the fourth axis, which was kind of nice. But then from there on out, for the next 3 and change years, it was the two Okumas, the M460 and the L2000. And they had problems, but they were very good, accurate, reliable machines. And so then going to the Prototrack machines was a bit of a downgrade. Although actually, I've experienced a lot of issues with the L2000 lathe. I would warm that spindle up overnight, 8, 10, 12 hours, and I would come in and I still wouldn't be able to hold more than 1 thou.
Really?
Yep, on diameter.
That's shocking.
And the Prototrack lathe, when I was making gear blanks this year for our prototype hub motor gearbox, I held the 10th on 40 something parts, no problem.
Huh.
Yep.
Very interesting. So I want to turn Leif's question around a little bit too. And speaking of not blowing smoke, tell me what we're doing wrong. I know you sent me a list. Some of those things are maybe covered by NDA, but the things that you can share, I'm more than happy to air my dirty laundry. What are the things you think we should do better and can do better?
Let me look, because I sent you this list in your DMs.
Yeah, I immediately screenshotted it in case we somehow lost it, because I was like, this is a very good list of things that we need to do better.
Yeah. Man, come on. All right, the list. An air gun at the ultrasonic cleaning station, alcohol bottle at each machine, hang the torque wrenches and tools on each machine instead of using table space, a real breaker bar for loosening tool holders instead of a piece of conduit going on the end of the wrench. Let's see, cutting tools away in boxes in neatly organized drawers, perhaps putting the drawer labels on the aluminum handle rather than the body of the drawer, where it will be a little bit more visible.
That needs to be done for sure.
Yeah. I asked if there was a how-to Proteum booklet, which is something that I looked for at Moog and at Renscott as well when I was there for the 3 weeks in the winter. It's very helpful. Even I just did it in my short time at Moog and Renscott. Just put together a little booklet with all the questions that you have and how you solve them, and that's helpful for everybody in the future. BT30 tightening fixture on a more rigid bench, proper air gun holder on the tightening table, a horizontal or vertical bandsaw or both, a stop block fence system for the chop saw. This was something that I built in high school, although it's actually not there anymore, which I'm a little butthurt about. We were just measuring every time with the tape measure, and occasionally people would forget to take the tape measure off, and then they would cut the tape measure in half and the thing would just spool back inside itself. So I built this little stop block system with a sewing tape measure glued into a little groove, and you just bump your stock up to whatever number you want. There's a stop block for repeated cuts and just cut away.
Oh, that's what you mean. I like that. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, you just go to Lowe's and get a couple bucks of lumber and you can make it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I really like that.
A thin kerf blade for the chop saw. This actually I didn't think was going to be very helpful, but it helped a lot with the force required to cut through large pieces.
So what's hilarious is I showed Brad this list like the second you sent it to me. And when he got to that one, he was like, well, it doesn't exist. So, cross that off the list. And then yesterday, our steel blade was getting really dull and really pissing us both off. And I was like, oh, I'll order a new one. I go on their website. Not only is there a thin kerf aluminum one, which I was like, cool, add to cart. And then I was like, oh, there's a stainless steel one, which I don't know if they added these recently or we were just blind to it, but both of those are on their way already.
Good. Yeah, they're very helpful. And they waste less.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Storing trash bags near every trash can rather than one central location. I'm a little on the fence about this one because on one hand, it's nice to keep inventory in one place. But on the other hand, if keeping inventory in one place means you have to walk 50 or 100 feet every time you need a trash bag, then it becomes a question of which is more efficient.
So one thing I was doing for a while, and I think I just used up all the stock in the bottom of the trash can, but I would throw 3 or 4 trash bags under that trash bag. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it doesn't work if you don't replace it. So.
Yeah, that's true. It works for a little bit. I talked to you about this one, and you guys said that you preferred not having them, but floor mats at every machine, like anti-fatigue mats, and then QR codes at each machine that lead to tutorial videos.
Yeah, I really like that idea too. Yeah, a few of those things we're actively already working on. Especially like yesterday, we had a big toolbox show up, so I can move all of the hand tools into there. Like I have that tiny little Husky cart that you saw for the hand tools, and then like the boxes that were stacked on top of it, pretty much because I didn't have room for them. So that was all taken care of. I have more tables showing up so we can reorganize the tooling area, because that definitely, like as you were even coming in, that is by far the area of the shop that I am most embarrassed by. Like there's just a ton of toolboxes and a ton of tools out because we end up batch working that and waiting until there's like 40 tools that need to be reset. So yeah, that's something that we're actively working on, and I might end up just having to buy like a Lista or a Vidmar cabinet or something for the tools themselves.
Yeah, I found that in school, especially as the night went on, things got messier and messier, and I was always walking around the shop anyway, and I started to make a point to, every time I went to walk for something, whether it was to go fill up my water bottle or to go check the calipers on some gauge pins or something, just take a tool and just put it back. Every time you go do something, just put a tool back. And suddenly everything got so much cleaner.
That was one thing I very much appreciated about the way you work in my shop, was that I think that Brad and I have worked there for so long and are definitely feeling maybe not the hurt, but I mean, most of our orders are very short timeline. And so we've kind of adopted this kind of lazy way of working, I would say, of just cleaning when it's a necessity and not being clean while we're working. And like everything about the way you operated was very clean. Like you broke down every tool that we took out of the Hermla rather than just the ones you needed. You label all your tool paths. Brad looked at that. He opened, he was inspecting that Delrin part before we shipped it. And opened your file and was like, did this psycho name all of his tool paths? And I was like, yeah, he did.
Yep, 100%. And I do that because, well, I'm neat because I didn't used to be. And when I worked in the home shop in the basement and was still sharing the space with my dad, he would just get ripping pissed when he would come down and every horizontal surface was covered in a box of screws turned upside down, sawdust, piles of wood, calipers, just like clamps, router bits, everything. And I don't know if it was like by force that I became neat, or if eventually I just matured enough to appreciate it. My old engineering teacher has some signs above all the parts bins in his Vex Robotics lab. It says something to the tune of, there is peace in organized bins, there is wisdom in organized bins, something like that.
I like that. Yeah.
So I definitely grew to appreciate it. I was not always neat and organized. And I think it also came from working in a school shop where I had no choice but to clean up, because if I didn't clean up, we weren't going to be able to use the shop.
Yeah, totally fair. No, it was something that stood out to me a lot, and I'm trying to adopt. Like Brad and I are definitely going to start, being better about washing down the machines and breaking down tools and all of that, because I really appreciated it. Like when I went after you left to then set up another Hermla job, I was like, I've got all these holders already ready to use. And like, it's nothing groundbreaking. Like this is very obvious stuff, but I think that we have just kind of fallen into a rut of how we operate, that seeing it a different way has been really nice.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And then tool organization in general, that's something we have. Shallower bins right now, and I really don't like them. And I don't know that I want to go Gridfinity, and I don't know that I want to go Grid Line, I think is the stuff from Hoffman. I just hate that there's not like a really good solution out there. Like the Lista track system or whatever is very similar to Grid Line. Not a super big fan of that either. I've been like racking my brain on what a good solution would look like, and I still don't know.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time in the last 5 years trying to figure out the best way, and I still have not figured out the best way, but I think given the space constraints that we had in the shop, I found a pretty good way, which was, I want to say it was 3 rows of 6 columns, and those everybody knows them. They're like 18 or 20-inch deep jeweler's drawers, those sheet metal things. And the first column was flat end mills specifically for aluminum, top to bottom, ranging small to large. And then we did bullnose. And in the bottom of bullnose, because we didn't have that many of them, was the roughing drawer. So it was flat, 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 bull, rough, and then 3 ball drawers. We had, let's see, 2 drawers for steel and titanium, ranging in size, and anything that was either coated or more than 5 flutes, we put in there. And then we had a necked drawer. We had 2 necked drawers ranging in size. We had an undercutting drawer. We had a hole making drawer that had drills, taps, and reamers. And then we had chonk, chungus, and one other ridiculously oversized drawer for like the foot long end mills.
Amazing.
Yeah. And that worked okay, but the drawers were a little bit too tall, and so we were constantly digging through them.
Right. Well, and like digging through to find a diameter, I think would drive me nuts. But I did really like your spreadsheet that went along with them. That I think was, I'm still not sure how I would want to implement that, because it does seem like a insurmountable amount of work right now to add everything we have. But I mean, to Zap's question that we'll cover soon, that might be a great thing for a future employee or intern to do. It's like, hey, this is how you put them in, get to it, have fun.
Yeah, I mean, you know that at some point you are going to organize your tools. It's either you do it now and it sucks, or you do it later and it sucks more.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We're not adding less tools to the library. Right. So
yeah,
very true. Yeah. Sean Connor asked, what was your biggest, or, a few of your biggest takeaways from this week?
I think my biggest takeaway comes less from the week and more from the 6 months preceding it, which was when I talked to Justin from Toolpath, actually, over winter break. He suggested that I reach out to you and see if I could come visit. And had I not just reached out, that never would have happened. I wouldn't have traveled across the country, wouldn't have met some awesome people, wouldn't have seen some cool museums and ate a lot of good food. So if something interests you, just ask. And if the
shout
person,
out to Justin. I messaged him just after you left and I was like, thank you so much for facilitating that. He's like, I just told him to ask you. Like, I didn't do much. I was like, you made it happen. So big shout out to Justin.
Yeah. If the person that you're communicating with is nice, the worst that they will say is no. And if they say something worse than no, then you know that you didn't want to be associated with them in the first place.
100%. Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Also, definitely to add on to my answer to that question, just investing in yourself and investing in your quality of life. Something that I was talking to Leif about on the ride back from Michigan was how to balance purchases and quality of life improvements, because sometimes, sort of like how you and Zap were talking about it, sometimes the improvements that you make don't save a lot of time, but they save just a little bit of quality of life. And generally, quality of life is worth way more than a little bit of savings. It's not linear at all.
I 100% agree. Like that. I mean, that is when people ask me about like power grip or anything like that, yes, we got it for the run out and improved accuracy and all that, but it's also like the mental load that is off of me of like, I don't have to worry about those tools. Like the only thing that's going to happen is they might chip a corner, but otherwise I know they're solid and I don't have to think about them anymore. And that is maybe to our detriment. Like we don't even think about purchases like that anymore. Brad and I are just like, yep, just get them. Like we just got a job that's a fair bit of titanium and it's going to be in laying vices. And I was like, you know what? This is a great opportunity to buy the stamping press because I don't want to have to worry about ripping these parts out of the jaws. Yep. Is it expensive? Yeah. Have I wanted it for a while? Also, yeah. Sounds like a great excuse. So Yeah,
Yep.
it's I highly recommend it. And like everybody can't just spend money willy nilly on stuff like that, but if you have the opportunity and the justification, I think it's well worth it.
Yeah. So let me ask you something about that, because I'm curious about how you factor in large purchases to jobs that the large purchase is for. This, for example, are you factoring in, if you're comfortable sharing, are you factoring in a percentage of that cost into the job?
The stamping unit, I didn't. This one requires a lot of TSC. So I bought the real TSC pump for our machine versus the power pressure washer one. And like you heard how loud those are. This job's going to last 2.5 weeks. So that I did factor a part of it into the cost.
Okay.
I don't have like a tried and true, like X percentage is based on, it was just like, we're going to throw a couple grand at it and call it a day kind of thing.
Right. Yep.
So
yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, it's much easier to understand those things if like I need a power grip, call it. It's like I just that is something I include in the quote because it's a couple $100, but it becomes a little more muddy when it's like, oh, I need a many $1,000 leg press. So
right. Yep.
Yeah. Let's see. So Zap's question was for me, and we can kind of chat about it. He said, after having an intern for a week, are you more excited to hire someone? Do you think you will do this sooner rather than later now? And what did you realize wasn't in place that would need to be when you bring on an employee? So I'll answer that backwards. I think the biggest thing I realized is that we needed more processes. Like there's a lot that is left verbal between Brad and I, and that isn't documented because we don't need documentation to run it. So a lot of that is going to need to be documented in the Obsidian or some other way. I love the idea of QR codes to scan and bring up videos on the machine and all that. The other big thing I realized was like how much I have running in my head all the time, how I need to kind of get that out and either have notes somewhere or something like that, because you're a very competent machinist. You still required some oversight. And I would be, pinballing around the shop trying to get my stuff done. And then you would ask me one question and I would lose it all. And like, I'm sure I had just like this completely blank stare on my face after you asked me a question, because I just felt all my thoughts running out of my ears. And then it was like, all right, I got to answer this question. And then picking it back up after that, I was like, I don't remember what I was thinking about or what I was doing or where I was going. And it would take me a second. And so that's clearly not a sustainable system.
Right. Yeah. No, I don't know that I could tell, but when you explained it to me, it definitely made sense at that point. I remember walking around the shop and people stopping me to ask questions. And sometimes I'll like literally be running through the shop, going to grab a gauge block or something. And they'll ask me a question and I will have absolutely no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Like why did I just walk into this room? Kind of like early onset dementia.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It feels 100% like that. Yeah. You would ask me like the most innocuous question and I would come away and just be like, I don't know what I was doing.
Yeah. Nope. Absolutely no clue.
Yeah.
So what about the rest?
One of the other things I realized was that we need some sort of internal communication system, whether that's Slack or something like that. I was having to give you a lot of data or things to reference off of, and I had no way of sending that to you. And like, granted, if you had a company email and had that pulled up, like I could have done that, but that is not like a instant kind of thing. And so I'm going to start researching how we want to do that. I hate Slack. I'm in a few Slacks. I don't think it's a very well organized app. The fact that you can't respond in line like you can in Discord is infuriating to me. And you have to create a new, sub thing every single time you want to respond in line is baffling to me. It's not how conversation works when you're talking about multiple things.
That's interesting that you don't like that. I kind of like that because it's tucked away, and everybody else, it's different for us because we have like 100 people in our Slack.
That I can see being tough. Yeah. But like for a few people, like even in the Instant Machinist Discord, like I am so thankful when somebody pings me and I don't see it for hours and then I can respond. And it's not like way back up 100 messages. It's just current and then they can respond. I like that much more. Like I like the ability, like in Discord, you can also do that where you can create little sub, whatever they
Threads.
call them. But yeah, that drives me nuts. And it just doesn't feel like a very stable app sometimes too. But yeah, we need that. Definitely need to document everything. Even simple stuff, I think, shouldn't be that hard to document.
If you're going to get a messaging service, definitely don't do River. If you've heard of River,
I've never even heard of it. No.
The best part about it is that when you send someone a direct message, you can say, I'll float that down the river to you. And everything else about it sucks. It's like Slack, but all the worst parts and nothing good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing I realized is we just need a lot more documentation. And we'll have to buy one of everything, too. Like when you showed up, we bought a new computer and monitor and a desk because we knew we were going to use it afterwards anyway. But either, you know, we had visitors this week even and had to like pull that desk into the break room and then pull like a few chairs in, and like everything is optimized for just Brad and I. So like our break room has 2 seats and a table just big enough for 2 people. We have, 2 desk chairs. It's just been us for so long that I think we're going to have to expand everything so that it makes sense.
Yeah. Fortunately, you're in a space that is conducive to that.
Yes. Yeah. For once, we have the room. We're definitely protective of it, but we can add a 3rd or 4th chair and be okay.
Yeah. You'll survive.
Yeah. I don't know that this is going to quicken anything, Zap. Like we need to hire somewhat soon. I think we'll likely hire someone for shipping and receiving and things like that, things away from manufacturing for now. And then I've been in contact with Pima about, my need to hire in the near future. And that's where we really want to hire from, as somebody who might not be anywhere as skilled as Ethan, but who comes from that kind of academic background and is willing to learn and excited to learn. I think that'll be really important for us.
Yeah. That could be key.
Yeah. I'm definitely excited though. Like I went from the first 2 or 3 days you were there, it was really bizarre to have a 3rd person in. Like Brad kept being, he'd come over and be like, I keep thinking Ethan's the UPS guy or something. I'm not used to a 3rd person in here. And I felt the same way. Like I would catch you out of the corner of my eye and be, oh, who's that? Oh, right. Ethan's here. But then by the end of it, I was really enjoying having someone I could give projects to or give tasks to, know that they're going to do them. And if they have questions, they'll ask. Like that was really cool. So I am very excited to hire someone and start training someone. I think it'll be a ton of fun.
Yeah. It's not to belittle what parenting is, but from what I understand, it feels like parenting light.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's tough. Like even somebody like you who is so skilled, it's tough for me to let go and just like understand that you're doing your best and you're skilled and all of this. Like it was not easy for me to let you run stuff on the Hermla or, just send you off on a Speedio and say, yeah, make this, despite knowing that you have the knowledge and skill to pull it off. It just felt very strange and it was tough.
Yep. I'm finding it very easy in retrospect, now that I'm not on this team anymore, to be like, oh yeah, these guys will figure it out. Like they have all the tools necessary. But when I was on the team, for some reason, and I think perhaps to mine and my teammates' detriment, sometimes I doubted people unnecessarily and was like, oh, they're not going to figure it out. I'm not sure why that was, but it definitely wasn't healthy. But I'm finding it interestingly much easier now in retrospect to be like, oh yeah, they're fine.
Right. Well, and the things I think I'm going to struggle with the most, or the thing that is the hardest, is deciding where to draw that line of this is how Proteum does something versus I need the end goal do it however you want. Like there are specific things, even those parts that you made when we were going back to your code, we were like, oh, he didn't do this and this that like we normally do. And you made good parts. It didn't really matter. And so it has started this, I don't know, thread in my mind of, what do I establish as this is the way we do things? And what is the thing that I can just let slide? And I don't think it's going to be easy, and I don't think it's going to happen all at once. It's going to be a learning thing of, you know what? It doesn't matter that he did it like this. It was safe. He got the result that I want, whatever. That's personal choice versus you better use these templates the way I showed you because this is how we do business.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. I have a follow-up comment and then 2 questions. I was talking to Justin actually, and he was saying the same things. What did I ask? Oh, I asked him if anybody from my team had reached out, and he said no. And then I said, how would you like them to reach out? And he said, have them reach out to Benjamin, who's one of his guys. Mm-hmm. And he said, it's very difficult for me to just hand off communication to Benjamin because it is against my nature to hand things off. But it's how things need to run for the company and the people within the company to be successful, which was interesting. My follow-up question, or one of the 2, is what did I do differently that you guys normally do or don't do?
2 things. So in your op 2, I think you used soft jaws that were already cut.
Mm-hmm.
We would never do that. Every part gets its own soft jaw unless it's like a step and the parts were already, like the soft jaws were already in there. But we almost always program an op 2 soft jaw. And then we almost always probe an op 2 just to verify that nothing has moved.
Interesting. So I thought that you were saying that in-process probing did not work.
Yeah. So I think I led you astray there. In most of in-process probing doesn't work the way our post works, but you can re-find a datum.
Okay.
So datum probing works, but I can't check for size and I can't check for location.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. I was going to do that and then remember that I had heard in-process probing doesn't work. And so every time I loaded, or when I loaded the soft jaws, I checked that they were level with each other. And then I probed X, Y, and Z in the soft jaw.
Okay. Yeah. I figured you had done that because the parts came out as good as they did. Yeah. So that, again, that's just a training and documentation aspect of, and realistically, we just need to get that post sorted and get it working with A1 mode. But yeah, that's very interesting. But yeah, both of us were like, oh, we would never do it like that. Like having our work coordinate in the back left corner, like you did. All of our soft jaw stuff is almost always center of part because, and actually that largely stems from the fact that offset probing does not work in A0 mode, at least without an IJK offset. And so like, it's a lot easier to just probe on center than it is probing off center like that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Huh. My follow-up question is, and don't feel afraid to out me, were those parts good?
Yeah, we shipped them.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad.
Yeah,
they were good when I measured them.
Yeah. And realistically, again, we trusted you that you had measured them, and I saw your notepad that you had, all the dimensions you pulled from CAD. But at the end of the day, it's, my customer and my responsibility. Yep. And so I had Brad, I was like, hey, just double check. I watched him measure them, but, last thing I want to do is ship anything bad. So please check those.
Yeah, no, I'm not offended.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I mean, you did a great job, and that was truly wild to just say like, hey, here's where the parts are, stocks up on the shelf, go at it. Like I have that with Brad, but I've never had that with anybody else where I can just, like, at the end of the day, I did nothing. It was awesome.
Right, I was thinking, I was like, he's kind of like cheating right now. He's kind of just free labor.
Yeah, it felt a lot like cheating. All the rest of the stuff, like I felt like you learned stuff along with it, like programming the probes, doing the kinematic stuff. I was like, oh, this I feel like I'm giving back. Like this is a give and take. But that stuff, I was like, oh man, these parts were just made and they're done, and I can ship them today and they're early. Cool.
Yep. I definitely learned something though. The smallest tool I had used prior to that was a 30-second ball end mill. I'd never used a 15 thou, so that was cool. Let's see. I rarely use 1/16. Usually I'm no smaller than an eighth of an inch.
Oh, that was the other thing that Brad noticed, and I didn't even notice, is he looked at your roughing in the Op2 with the 1/16 and was like, oh man, this is slow. I was like, well, I don't think that he has a
Really?
lot of experience in Delrin and a lot of experience with these tools. And like you could have pushed it 3 times, 4 times as hard and it would have been totally
Interesting.
fine. Like
Yeah,
you
I
could have
was
full
just
slot and just gone straight to finish and probably been A-okay in Delrin.
yeah, I was just using the preset and programming it like how I would have an aluminum part.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. You definitely wouldn't have gotten away with it in aluminum like that. But yeah, it was cool. It was really, really cool for me to just be able to do that. And going back to Zap's question, that part made me very excited. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel eventually of just being able to, lay out work for people, do my stuff and have it done. And if there's questions, like great, there's questions and I can help, but otherwise not my problem, which was super cool.
Yep. Yeah, that's very neat.
All right. More generic questions, not on your time here. Tux Garage asked, if you had unlimited money, what single machine would you buy and why?
This one feels like asking a kid who their favorite baseball player is. Feels like a little unfair. I think if I had unlimited money, I probably would do something horizontal just for the reliability. Probably something pallet changer for once the process is proven, the ability to just walk away. Something with a nice big tool changer so you can keep lots of tools in for multiple jobs and part families. And it would be great if it were 5-axis. And so I'm realizing that I'm just describing a grobe. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just describing
I'm just
a
like
grobe.
sitting here checking mental boxes like, yeah, all right, we're getting closer. That decision tree is getting closer and closer to one option.
Yep. Yep. I really enjoyed running that machine. That was a lot of fun. Very high spindle speed and very high torque as well. Well, not that fast. 21 grand isn't that fast, but it's pretty fast. And the high torque is also nice.
So I think if RPM limit 21. Like I've seen a lot of 20s, I've seen a lot of 25s, but it's very rare that it ends, in a 1 or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, you have an 18 grand. That's an odd one too.
Yeah, it is 100%. Yeah. They seem like pretty amazing machines. That's for sure. I'm excited to hear cool. After you have more experience, like what you like, and more importantly, the little gremlins, because I think that there's not a lot of Grobe users out there. You can talk to Dennis, and you can talk to Dennis.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think there's. Oh, I can talk to Phil Derbs on Instagram.
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah. He has one as well. Exactly, and the guys at Area 419 also have one.
Yep, I really like that Lang plate they have with the flicky clamp that the Fanuc robot actuates.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
that was a cool one.
Let's see. Sean also asked, if you could make parts for one specific industry, what would it be?
Interesting. Well, I haven't made parts for a ton of different industries. I've done aerospace, both defense and commercial, plenty of motorsport. Let's see, some defense. I made a couple like nuclear parts, and otherwise just like the couple, I guess, commercial or sort of, yeah, I would say just commercial parts that I made at your shop. I think the people that I enjoy working with the most are the motorsports people, because they're so passionate about what they do and they appreciate the work that you do. And it shows directly on the car, both in performance and aesthetics. Just, yeah.
Yeah,
they're
that makes
very
sense.
appreciative. They're very appreciative of what you do. And it's not just like a Lockheed engineer that makes 90 grand and goes home at the end of the day and goes home to, their family. These people live, eat, sleep racing.
Right. I imagine that you're ending up at a great first job then. Because
Yep.
Renscott not only does the cool aerospace side of it and all that, but also, have their roots in automotive and motorsports.
Right. Yep. Yeah, you definitely got to get David on.
Yeah,
He's a very
I really
interesting,
want to.
very humble guy to talk to.
Awesome. Let's see. Dynamic Kyle asked, I would love if y'all would chat about your relationships with not only tool reps, but more the applications guys at the tools companies. So he was talking about, I think I was talking about Freza and, how much I really like their real world testing that they do. Do you have any stories of relationships you've developed with apps guys?
Well, let's see. Dan, I don't think is technically an apps guy. I think his title is regional sales manager, but Dan is just the man all around. Dan, yeah, Dan and company took all the manufacturing guys out to dinner in Rochester when they swung by, and then we gave them a tour of the shop. It was a really awesome experience. Moog was a big enough company where salespeople and apps guys could have their own ID badges and just come in and say hello whenever they wanted. And so I became good friends with some Kennametal guys. One of the Sandvik guys came through, Doug, I think Webster is his last name. He came through and for my birthday gave me, the Sandvik Bible that's like how to do everything.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
He gave me one of those
just down there on the bookshelf.
Yeah, he gave me one of those for my birthday last year. All the Morris guys from that sold us the Okuma machines, they're very responsive. They give me all the information that I need. We had a couple of people from Micron at the tool company, not GF, who came in and they were really great. I honestly can't say that I've had a bad experience, but I haven't, dealt with a ton of them like you have.
Yeah, I would say the only apps guys I've talked to are the Freza guys and then Dave at Carbide Cutting Tools. I mean, he's kind of the everything there. Yeah, he is the apps engineer. He's the guy who's making your tools. He's doing, a large majority of all that. So it is fantastic to be able to talk to people who understand cutting. Very often you get a salesperson who's like, I'm told that they're great. And you're like, cool. All right. Then you talk to, Doug or Joel at Freza, and they're like, yeah, so when I used to grind these end mills for Freza before I became a salesman, we would do this. And you're like, sweet. That's the inside baseball that I've been looking for. And they're more than willing to kind of back it up. Like that, every recommendation they have given me is not a home run, but they're willing to work the problem with you and say, okay, if that didn't work, let's try this. And really, they are technical salespeople. The other example of this that blew me out of the water was at the DSI event in California last year. They had a Kennametal presentation, and I don't remember her last name, but it was Katie something gave it. And when she was walking around, I'll admit, like, I was very biased because I thought these people like her and there was another guy from Kennametal with her. I just thought that they were like just salesmen. I was like, this is boring. I don't want to hear this stupid presentation. Get on with it. And then I think halfway through or 3/4 of the way through, she just started doing Q&A, and they were asking about, well, how do you know that these are good speeds and feeds, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, I was a tooling test engineer, actually. And we would go through, hundreds of blocks trying these speeds and feeds and cranking things up until we broke an end mill or wore it out or something. And that was so cool for me. Like for her to just, actually have not only experience running the tools, but running the tools super aggressively and being able to back up like, no, if we give you speeds and feeds for like, I think it was the Harvey 1 TE or something. She's like, we ran that through blocks and blocks and blocks of 4140 at full slot. And, here's where it broke. And then here's how we developed that speed and feed recipe. And it was super, super cool.
Yeah. I actually, for my first co-op, was talking to a couple Kennametal people and had sort of informally been offered a position in Latrobe, Pennsylvania to do that. And sometimes I wish I had taken that because that would have been a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, that would have been really, really interesting.
I want to say the only time, and this really shows how little experience I've had talking to apps people, the only time that I haven't gotten what I needed was on one of the MU4000s at Moog, which was hooked up to the 266 ATC. They would not walk me through how to remap the jog pendant to control the ATC arm when it was stuck in a tool change. They said, "I'm sorry, we can't do this. This is too expensive of a system. We'll have to send someone out." I did it anyway, but that was the only time that they would not directly walk me through it.
That's frustrating. I had a somewhat similar experience on one of the Matsuras at my last job, where we would get these tool change inverter alarms, and I had tried so many things to fix it already, and then I called support and got an apps guy, and he basically took me back to my step one and was like, "All right, so we need to walk through all these things." I was like, "Already done it. Where do I go in the manual to turn on this?" I knew it was like a key relay or a parameter to let me access and manually jog the tool change arm. And it was like 2 days of back and forth with emails till finally he was like, "Oh yeah, you go to keep relay, I think it was 16-bit 6, and you turn that to a 1, and then it enables manual jog in Handyman." It's like, "Cool, thanks. That's what I needed 3 days ago. Thanks, buddy." So sometimes that stuff can be very, very frustrating, especially when they're not on site and they're just, reading off their troubleshooting flow chart or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that takes care of the questions. Shop news and new things. You've graduated. Any other plans for the summer that you're excited about?
Let's see. I'm continuing to, when necessary, help out and give guidance to the people on my former team. We're still coming down from the high of winning. I think I just have my voice fully back. Let's see. I just came back from Tucson. I'm going to Kern in 24 hours, I guess. I am working on, be careful. I'm working on a piece of an important demo piece. Very indescriptive. A part of an important demo. That will be clear soon. And then from there, just starting a Rent Scout in August.
Awesome. You're getting so much Patane experience before Rent Scout. That's great.
Yeah. That'll be very handy.
And many different flavors as well, which I think is equally important. Like knowing all the little permutations and how every company does it differently will be, I think, helpful in the long term.
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
And hopefully IMTS in September. Is that when it is? Yeah, September.
Yeah, September 9th, I think it starts, 8th or 9th, through whatever the end of that week is, 14th, 15th. Quick reminder, I will be there. Brad will be there. We're doing a big meetup at Kern again on that Wednesday. I don't know time yet, but probably mid to late day like we did last time. Stay tuned and Kern and I will announce that, but I'm super excited for that. Last time was overwhelming, the amount of people that were there. And you said that you haven't been to one yet, right?
I have not. Nope.
So yeah, prepared to be overwhelmed. I remember my first IMTS and I thought I knew a lot, and then you start walking and by the end of the first day you're like, my brain wants to explode and my legs hurt and I'm ready for a nap.
Yeah, I'm not prepared. I don't think I could be prepared, but I am anticipating.
For sure. Well, that brings me to the last 3 questions I ask every week. First up, what did you research this week? Doesn't have to be manufacturing related, but what's been popping up in your browser?
Definitely reprogramming a probe. That's one. I would say I'm trying to find housing in Boston is surprisingly difficult. Something that's not going to cost an arm and a leg. Something that's relatively close to work, in a good neighborhood, near good resources. It doesn't feel like that many boxes to check, but apparently it is. What else have I been researching? I've been looking into alternative, or I was, not really anymore, looking into alternative design softwares for the Formula team, because although SolidWorks is okay on its own, when you hook up 3D Experience, it's just horrible. I think 3D Experience was a native CATIA thing, and they tried to integrate it with SolidWorks, I believe. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how it works. And they just don't play well. So I was looking into alternatives. That's kind of about it. How about you? What have you been researching?
Uh, let's see. I feel like I haven't been researching anything. I'm feeling very crazy. I was trying to help a friend with he's got a Dynapath CNC, Ryan, who's written in questions before, was having issues. And so I was doing a little research on trying to help him because he was having some weird Z repeatability issues, which I think he just fixed today, which is fantastic. I'm so stoked for him. I can't, like, every time I hear, I'm sure you do too, anytime you hear of problems that are not repeatable and not easy to diagnose, is just frustrating for everybody involved. And then researching, I was getting all the laying stuff together for that order. So figuring out which stamping unit we wanted. They have the new full serration jaws, which are backwards compatible. And so we went with that. But then we also they have two versions of the stamping unit now. They have the old style and then the new, I don't even know how they differentiate it, the new full serration unit. And so it's got the pressure gauge is now on the front of the unit. It opens a little wider than the old version, and the full stamping jaws can be rotated. I think they said 4 times versus the old ones had to be sent in after the first time that they gauged incorrectly. So we went with that because the price differential was $300 or $400 or something like that. It's like, if I'm already spending, I think it's $7,000 or something, it's like a couple $100 to get the newer, nicer unit makes 100% sense. So very stoked on that. We got our post modified to 5 decimal places. Seems to have fixed a lot of the issues that we were seeing with full 5-axis surfacing on the Hermla. I think that's about it in terms of research. So what are the things you're working on to be a better person, employee, what have you? None of us are perfect. What are you up to?
Well, I think like everybody, just continuously, not necessarily focusing on one thing, but as the days go by, just stopping within interactions and trying to recognize how I can improve. But how I can improve, full stop. In terms of specifics, I am trying to learn some new software. I'm working on, I guess I'm kind of giving away a project here, but in the next 6 months, I'm going to machine a life-size Grogu. And I am working on learning some Inventor surfacing and some power shape skills. So that's something that I'm working on. It's surprisingly not intuitive. Inventor is. Power shape is not that intuitive, I'm finding. So if anybody has some good experience with that, I'd be curious to hear. And just trying to be helpful to Ren Scott. I'm working part-time, but haven't really done any work in the last month or so, just because I've been so busy. So trying to help out and be a contributing member of the team.
I didn't realize you were working part-time for them already.
Yeah, I've been working part-time since I finished in the winter, actually.
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's been helpful. When I actually get to do some work, sometimes they just don't have any projects for me, and sometimes I just don't have the time. Usually it's my fault. And I would say the other thing that I'm working on is trying to be more thankful. I have been very fortunate in the last 5 years and haven't always shown my thanks to the people who deserve it. Spending time with family and my girlfriend and treating people how they deserve to be treated.
Awesome. I love it.
What about you? I'm turning it around again.
I think I'm continuing in my efforts to try to be less fragmented. I think that I'm at the point where I have enough on my plate that I am feeling very scattered, and that's not helpful for my personal relationships. It's not helpful for my business. And so I don't know that I'm doing anything actively to fix that, but I think that I'm in still the discovery stage of figuring out what is causing this and how to get myself out of it and center myself a little better. There's a lot going on right now. And so kind of bringing myself back into my own body and not being so all over the place is paramount to my success. And so, yeah, like I said, I don't think I'm actually doing anything yet to help that, but I'm actively acknowledging it and trying to find the sources of it.
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, it's a start. And then last up, what is a win from the last week or two that you want to share?
Well, definitely the whole week was just kind of one giant win. It started off not looking so good when I thought I wasn't going to have all my clothes. But that was a major W, getting the clothes from Atlanta.
Yeah, seriously.
We programmed the probe. That was good. Got some parts done. Got the impeller done. Almost took a major loss because I thought my flight was a day later, but then figured it out in time. I promise I'm not incompetent. That was good.
It was funny to me. Like, it was not an inconvenience at all. But yeah, Ethan texted me. We were supposed to record on Wednesday this week because we thought he was staying through midday Wednesday. And he texted me Monday night and goes, "Oh shit, my flight is tomorrow. I was wrong." I was like, "Oh, okay, no worries."
Yeah. Oh, going back to the second question, admitting I was wrong and telling other people when they were right is definitely something that I'm working on. And it sounds silly, but even like intentionally, actively going out of your way to say, "I was wrong, you were right," actually makes a huge difference.
For sure. Yeah. I completely agree.
Yep. Otherwise, wins from the week. I'm back. I'm selling some stuff on eBay, some random tools that I've picked up over the years. All good.
Awesome.
Yep.
Wins from this week, I would say, I mean, having you here was fantastic. Like I said, I learned a lot about the company, like my company. I learned a lot about how we're going to be moving forward and the things we need to do. And a lot about myself and just like having another person in the shop and the ways I need to teach and flow down the Proteum way kind of thing. And then also after you left, I had 2 parts that were going to be 3 parts that were going to be 5-axis parts. And the first one I started programming while you were here and then ran Wednesday, I think. And I programmed it, spent a lot of time on it, finished my programming with the thought there is 0 chance that this is going to work. And I'm going to have to find a different way to like slap it together. And I pulled it off flawlessly. Like I impressed myself. I was like, man, this actually worked out so well. And I'm so happy with it. So that was a giant win. And I'm finally starting to feel a little bit more at home programming 5-axis parts and kind of figuring out stresses and cutting parameters that work. So giant win.
Excellent. Yeah, that's such a great feeling. When you just are so positive that something's not going to work and then it goes your way and it's like, oh, I'm like the greatest person on planet Earth. Like, and then like 30 seconds later, you make a huge mistake and you're right back to square one.
Yeah. Yeah. I am 1,000% sure that, you know, I have mine coming to me, but this week was good. There was 3 parts in a row that the first one for sure I thought was going to fail, didn't fail. The other 2 I was able to pull off and the parts were good. They were up to our standards, but only just, I guess I should say. Like, I was happy to ship them. I had to touch them up a little bit, but it was a big learning experience. And so I am sure that I will have a job coming up soon that will humble me. And as the normal ups and downs and roller coaster of doing this stuff is.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I don't want anybody to think that I think that I'm anything special, because at the end of the day, all it takes is one part and you're just the same as everybody else.
Yeah. Like this trade has such high highs and low lows, like or at least for me, I pinball between like sheer euphoria and just like the deepest depression and self-loathing, and within the span of like 24 hours sometimes.
Yeah, you told me when I was there that occasionally you think about just being a bartender, hanging it all up.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Sometimes no stress sounds really good. Like that. I've talked to a few business owners and we've all said the same thing. Like sometimes the idea of just not having to think about anything and just being able to leave it at the door when you go home from work, that sounds very attractive. But the other benefits of owning your own business are fantastic too. You know, being able to get in whenever you want and leave whenever you want, and there's no other freedom like it, I think. So yeah, it is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, I tend to agree. Well, not that I know anything about a business, but I do agree. Doing things for yourself is definitely motivating.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for coming out for an entire week. Really, really appreciate it. And then thanks for catching up with me and getting to talk about it. I really, really value all your opinions and your outside perspective on everything.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was very much a pleasure. I think we both learned quite a bit. Can't thank you enough.
Yeah, truly our pleasure as well. Thanks to new Patreon members, Joseph and RC. You guys make the show possible. Let me send people like Ethan a headset and mic so that you guys get good audio. Thank you all for listening, and I will be back next week.